Welcome to One Step Past. I'm Bucky Wild, and this is Way Past Strange. The disappearing Cyclops and the Bermuda Triangle. What happened to the USS Cyclops? That is a mystery over 100 years old with no solution in sight. Even more strange, the Cyclops had 3 sister ships, all of which were ill-fated. 3 of these 4 ships were lost at sea without a trace. But why should all of them perish? Is it just coincidence, or are there darker powers at work? And how does the Bermuda Triangle figure into this? Here is what we do know. Number 1. USS Cyclops. The Cyclops and its sister ships were built for the United States Navy as colliers, meaning that they carried coal and other materials. It had been in service since 1910. On May 1st, 1917, it was commissioned for service in World War I. For several months, the ship and its crew performed its wartime functions well. Then things get murky. The Cyclops left Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, on February 16, 1918, with a load of manganese ore, a metal with many industrial uses. It entered Salvador, Brazil, on February 20th, 1918. While still in Salvador, Lieutenant Commander George Worley sent a report that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was not operative. The survey board, however, recommended that the ship still be returned to the United States. On February 22nd, the Cyclops left Salvador for Baltimore, Maryland. No stops were scheduled. However, an emergency stop had to be made in Barbados, an island country in the Caribbean. The water level was over the plimsoll line, indicating that the ship was overloaded. However, it was proven in Rio de Janeiro to have been loaded and secured properly. After everything was checked over, the Cyclops left Barbados for Baltimore on March 4th, 1918. So far, we know that the ship had engine trouble and that it was potentially overloaded. After March 4th, 1918, no one knows what happened to the Cyclops. The ship and its crew of 306 people all vanished without a trace. It still remains the largest loss of life for the U.S. Navy in an event not involving combat. The Cyclops was rumored to have been seen by the molasses tanker Amalco on March 9th, near Virginia. The Amalco's captain, however, denied this. Is someone lying? If so, why? Cyclops wasn't expected to arrive in Baltimore until March 13th. If it was, in fact, near Virginia on March 9th, it would only have been a day away from its final destination. If the ship was seen by the Amalco, that would have been very weird. Given the fact that Cyclops was having engine trouble and probably carrying more of a load than it could handle, it probably wouldn't have arrived until after March 13th. For it to be seen on March 9th would almost mean that it would have had to have jumped ahead in time. On March 10th, a day after the Cyclops was thought to have been sighted by the Amalco, a violent storm swept through the Virginia Capes area. Once again, the timing of this is a problem. If the Cyclops wasn't even supposed to have been in that area at that time, how could bad weather sink it? As you can see, possible explanations aren't adding up. So what could possibly be attributed to the Cyclops' disappearance? The ship wasn't that old, and it did a lot of work in its 8-year existence. I don't really buy the idea that it was structurally unsound. You can't say that the ship's captain was inexperienced. Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley was the same man who was in charge of the ship since 1910. It was wartime. Maybe the Germans sank it. Sound theory, except for the fact that German authorities denied any knowledge of the vessel at that time and have continued to do so. If the Germans did sink it, why wouldn't they own up to it now? A lot of things don't make sense. Of course, it wasn't until after the ship's disappearance that things were discovered about Commander Worley. I find it strange that the Navy didn't know all these disturbing things about Worley before all this, and why they have been so forthcoming with this information after the fact. How much of this is to be believed? Apparently, Worley was an illegal German immigrant by the true last name of Wickman, who had been in this country since 1878. He was a violent, crazy man who often brutalized his crew, and not all of his cargo-carrying activities were legal. It was said that he sometimes carried opium. It was also said that he sympathized with the Germans in World War I, and the sinking of the Cyclops was some sort of collusion with the enemy. Well, I think that even in 1910, the U.S. Navy did a better job of screening people than that. I don't think an insane man would be kept in charge of the same ship by the Navy for 8 years. In short, I don't think Worley is guilty of anything more than being a patsy to explain away something the Navy couldn't or didn't want to answer back then. Plus, it rallied support against those darn Germans. One popular urban legend is that the Cyclops disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. As a matter of fact, the ship most likely went down in this area. Whether the ship just sank or vanished into thin air is up for debate. Considering what happened to two of the Cyclops' sister ships, the idea of it vanishing in the Bermuda Triangle may not be so preposterous. We'll dig into that a little deeper. Number 2. USS Proteus. It was many years later when the second of 4 ships disappeared. Like the Cyclops before it, the Proteus vanished without a trace. It was no longer U.S. Navy property when it was sold to the Canadian Merchant Navy in early 1941. The ship was carrying a load of bauxite ore used to make aluminum. It was last seen on November 23, 1941, in or near the Caribbean Sea. Once again, the legend of the Bermuda Triangle is offered as an explanation for its disappearance. Also, once more, it's not totally implausible. The Bermuda Triangle is just a little north of the Caribbean Sea. Like the Cyclops before it, the Germans did not make any claims as to having destroyed it. It was World War II already, and Germany wasn't modest about their accomplishments. So if they didn't sink the Proteus, what did? Some people believe that heavy storms on November 25th sealed the ship's fate. All 58 crew members were lost. Number 3. USS Nereus. The vanishing of this ship happened so soon after the Proteus that it's extra eerie. Like the Proteus, the Nereus was no longer American property. It had been sold to the Aluminum Company of Canada in early 1941. It was also carrying bauxite ore for aluminum. The Proteus had disappeared sometime after November 23, 1941. The Nereus was last seen on December 10, 1941. Like the Cyclops and Proteus, no Germans claimed responsibility for sinking it. The ship was last seen taking off from St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. This is very, very close to the Bermuda Triangle. For all the people who think the Bermuda Triangle is totally bunk, it's awful hard to explain away the fact that 3 ships disappeared in that vicinity without a trace and without any solid explanation as to what happened to them. All 61 crew members were lost. Number 4. USS Jupiter. This ship was also lost at sea, but by no means under mysterious circumstances. In a strange way, the loss of the Jupiter only makes the disappearances of the previous 3 ships even more mysterious. Here's why. The Jupiter was converted to an aircraft carrier between 1920 and 22 and recommissioned as USS Langley. It was the first American aircraft carrier. This ship was extremely active in World War II. On February 27, 1942, The Langley was carrying fighter planes to Java in Southeast Asia. All of a sudden, a team of 16 Japanese aircraft struck the mighty carrier with 5 bombs. It was a critical hit. The surviving crew members were rescued, and immediately after the Langley was scuttled by torpedoes from the 2 destroyers that were escorting it. This may sound strange that our own destroyers would have finished off the Langley, but we didn't want it falling into enemy hands. Sadly, most of the 630 plus survivors from the Langley didn't live long after that. They were transferred to the oiler ship USS Pecos. While en route to Australia, the Pecos was sunk by more Japanese aircraft. Those who weren't killed by plane were killed by Japanese submarines. Only 232 of the crew made it. War isn't nice. There isn't any mystery behind the disappearance of the Jupiter, other than the spooky coincidence that it was lost along with its 3 sister ships. We know exactly what happened to the ship and its crew. We also know where it happened. Java is a long, long ways away from the Bermuda Triangle. When the fate of the Jupiter, or Langley, is so definite, and the fates of the other 3 ships are so indefinite, it makes the previous disappearances all the more strange. Especially since the disappearances of the Proteus and Nereus happened so soon before the Langley. 4 ships, each one of them met with tragedy. Why? The mystery behind the Cyclops and its sister ships might always be fated to remain way past strange. Don't feel sunk. I'll be back with more fantastic out there videos. In the meantime, if you like what you've seen, hit like and subscribe. Comments are also welcome. Thanks for watching and have yourself a strange but happy day.